All right. I think we can go ahead and get started now. Thank you to everyone who's jumped in and said hello and let us know where you're from. Great to see people dialing in from all across Australia and New Zealand. And I think Mike's already jumped in and said hello to our partners, but thank you to our partners and everyone else who's joined us today as well. I'm calling from Melbourne today, so I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians of the land I'm on.
Hey everyone, I'm calling in from Adelaide, so I'd like to acknowledge the Kaurna people as the traditional custodians of the land that I'm on and pay my respects to their elders past and present. And of course, we extend that acknowledgement to the traditional custodians of wherever you might be joining in from today as well. And I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people who are on the webinar with us today. Today, we're going to be looking at the 2026 Gifts and Wills report, which analyzes over 137,000 online wills, including the people who wrote them, the gifts that they've pledged, and the cause areas that benefited from this. Now, obviously, by the nature of this information, it's going to be quite data heavy. So we're actually also sending up a follow-up with a copy of the full report, which you can refer back to at any time heading forward as well. Thanks, Adam. All right, so on the agenda today, we'll kick things off with a quick introduction, and then we'll talk about some of the key figures and findings of this report. We're also going to touch on what we're seeing from probated wills, probated online wills, and what is really exciting about it is that we're going to use all of that to make some data-informed forecasts for the future as well. Now, if you do have any questions as we go, feel free to pop them into the Q&A box at the bottom, and our colleague will answer them as we go along. And also, please don't use the chat feature if you can for questions, specifically the Q&A box if you can, and there'll be plenty of time at the end to go through anything that might warrant a bit more of a longer answer. Adam, I'll throw back to you to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Mike. For anyone who hasn't joined us before, my name is Adam. I'm the head of partnerships at Everywell. Me and my team largely look after incoming nonprofit partners, helping them figure out which solution is best suited for their organization. We do have a range of different subscriptions and that sort of thing, so something for every budget that we can discuss. And Mike is our head of partner success, but I'll let Mike go ahead and introduce himself.
Thank you. Yeah, so I look after the partner success team at Everywill. So we step in once an organization has decided to join us, and we pick up that support from where Adam's team left off. Our role is to deeply understand your Gifts and Wills goals and strategy and work with you in supporting that strategy and achieving those goals. So we continue to check in with our charity partners to make sure that the tier that they're on is working for them. We support you with any campaign assets and guidance that you might need. And where the partner success team are the main point of contact as well, and a sounding board if and when you need it. A quick overview of how things are tracking. Over 160,000 wills have been created on the Everywill platform, formerly gathered here, and every single one of those has been 100% free. Importantly, the will platform isn't just free, it's also good quality, and will writers are very, very happy with the service that they get. We have over 6,000 five-star reviews from verified will writers and an overall review rating of 4.9 out of 5. Naturally, this is translating into a lot of trust within the nonprofit sector. We're extremely grateful to have over 1,100 nonprofit partners who are using our platform to give their supporters an easy way to write a will and to also pledge legacy gifts. And many people are doing that. Currently, we estimate that over $1.8 billion has been pledged via the Everywill platform. Just a disclaimer on the data that's ahead. These numbers, or the data that's here, these numbers look at a little differently from what's shared in the Gifts and Wills report, simply because that report looks at all the data from the start of 2021 to the end of 2025. but we've obviously operated a few months into 2020, and we're a few months into 2026, obviously. So things have shifted a little. But let's get into the data. I think a good place to start might be the wills themselves. So this graph here shows the number of wills written in each year from 2021 to 2025. In total, there were just over 137,000 wills written, and pretty incredibly, there was a 753% growth in the number of wills written actually between the first full year of operation and the most recent full year of operation as well. So why should we care about this? I think there's a couple of clear signals. It clearly signals a shift in consumer behavior and sentiment. Digital will writing has moved firmly into the place of mainstream and has gained widespread acceptance, where previously online wills were perhaps considered somewhat of an outlier or something that may have appealed to the more tech savvy. That's just not the case anymore. Everyone and their grandma are turning to online wills. And naturally, as consumer adoption has increased, so has the number of charities and the non-profits integrating online wills into their bequest programs and their strategy. So when we closed out 2021 after offering online wills and our gifts and wills management platform for a little over a year, we had 65 non-for-profit partners. By the time we reached the end of 2025, over 1,000 charities and non-profits had partnered with us, and that continues to grow this year. For us, that's one of our biggest indicators of value and success because we know how much scrutiny charities and non-profits face when making important strategic decisions like this. Very few organizations make this kind of partnership decision lightly. And so we're really proud, obviously, to have so many of you in partnership with us, and we're very grateful for the support. With that context in terms of where online wills are and how online wills are being embraced by the non-for-profit space, let's take a closer look at the wills themselves, and I'll throw to you, Adam, to lead this next part.
Thanks, Mike. So here we've got a pretty high level look at some of those key figures. Of the 137,000 wills that were created, 17% of those included at least one charitable gift. However, when wills were written by known charity supporters, that percentage increased to 43%. Now, the vast majority of those gifts, sitting at about 82%, were residual or percentage of the person's estate, and the average gift value was just over $52,000, which brings the total pledged value to 1.6 billion. Now, obviously, that's a lot of numbers to sort of take in, so we can break that down a little bit. But one of the things we found that was really interesting was that disparity between the giving rate in the general public and those known charity supporters. So here's what that breakdown looks like in a bit more detail. Looking at will writers who arrived directly to our site, maybe from a search engine or one of our social media posts or advertisements, 13% of those people included a gift in their will. You'll see there that we refer to these people as consumer will writers, just so we have separation between people who arrive of their own accord and people who arrive from a charity provided link, because they do behave quite differently, which we'll see here. Now that 13% of gift leavers is still about double the rate of giving that we see through traditional wills when we look at the data from solicitor drafted wills. When we look at the will writers who arrived to our platform from a charity link or campaign, maybe that's a page on a charity website or an email, a flyer, something like that, the difference here is quite stark. 43% of those people pledged at least one gift to charity, so vastly different giving behaviors between these two groups. Now, when we combine those two groups into a total average, we're sitting at about 17% of all wills written through our platform to include a gift. Now, you might think that the incredible generosity of known supporters would move the needle a little bit more in that total percentage, but it really comes down to the challenge of getting people to write a will when it might not necessarily be top of mind for them. So let's take a step back and look at these two demographics a bit more. So here we can see that the known charity supporters, again, that's people who arrive at every will via a link provided by a charity or nonprofit, account for 13% of the total wills written on our platform, obviously compared to the remaining 87% of people who then arrive of their own accord. However, as we just saw, the giving rates between these two groups is quite different. So consumer will writers end up pledging 77% of gifts, while known charity supporters end up pledging 23% of gifts. Now, look, this information might be interesting, but what does it actually mean? Well, what these numbers really end up telling us is that depending on which demographic you approach, you're likely going to see a very different result. And understanding those general giving behaviors can help to manage your expectations within the organization and some of your strategies around that as well. It's also indicating that ideally a split approach to legacy fundraising, targeting both those consumer will writers and existing supporters, is the best way to structure an online will program if you're able to do so. Now, this is because these consumer will writers are far more likely to write a will. One, there are just more people in that cohort. And two, if they're sort of actively searching for online wills or will writing keywords, then they're probably sort of more on the market for a more immediate will writing solution. The sheer number of wills that they're writing means that by advertising to this group, you can create a really steady stream of gifts and generally brand new supporters without really having to do too much in terms of marketing and sort of time and resources that you're pouring into it. Just by appearing on our platform, you're going to reach a much broader audience. And although they're giving it a much more modest rate, because of the volume, you'll see a very high rate of gifts coming through. On the other hand, it's also important to reach out to your own existing supporters because when you do, and you get them to actually write a will, they are significantly more likely to actually pledge a gift, as we've seen in the data here. And this is why it's so important to make it as easy as possible for supporters to find information about online wills on your website and to have frequent touch points with them, various reminders, and really just educate them on the importance of writing a will. Because once they get to that point in their life where they're ready to actually write a will, they remember that they get a free one through you, whether that's from a website or an email, you're very likely to see a gift as a result. So you may be putting in the work with education pieces and case studies, emails, and things like that, and they can be hugely successful. But even when they don't necessarily result in a bunch of gifts immediately, it's all working towards steadily improving that gifter rate and could very well pay off quite significantly in the end. Of course, reaching this demographic is completely free. You don't incur any costs when generating gifts through your existing supporters. So even a more modest outcome from some of these campaigns can be a great result for organizations. Since we're on the subject of some of these demographics, I think it's worth looking at to who's actually writing wills and pledging gifts beyond whether they're just a known supporter or not. Mike, I might pass back to you. I know these demographics are really important to you and your team.
Thank you. The good old age demographic, a good one to always look at. Pretty topical if you follow news about the Collingwood Football Club. But yeah, if we look at the ages of will writers first, we see a very even split across age demographics, which tells us that every age group is engaging in estate planning and every age group is embracing digital options as well. So when we look at this data, 17% of will writers wills were written by seniors, so those who are aged 65 and over. If we expand that group to everyone who is over 55, they wrote 37% of wills. And then on the other end of the spectrum, just 3% of wills were written by under 25s. And if we expand that age demographic to include all people under 35, it's around 20%. So with that in mind, let's look at the actual gifts that are being pledged. So we got two charts here to look at the numbers of gifts pledged on the left, and then the value of those gifts pledged are on the right. So again, a really positive outlook here, and it's fantastic to see that relative stability across these charts because, as you all know, it would be very worrying if lots of gifts were if lots of over 65 were simply just writing wills but not pledging any gifts, and thankfully that's just not the case. Over 65-year-olds, they account for 15% of gifts and 17% of gift value. And then when we expand that again to over 55-year-olds, they pledge about a third of all gifts and 37% of all gift value. Um, I obviously want to stress that younger donors are incredibly valuable and shouldn't be overlooked as well, as that lifelong attachment to an organization or the opportunity to build a connection can really generate other revenue and obviously can create a truly dedicated supporter and advocate, which, as you all know, is really, really important and again, incredibly valuable to your organization. In our line of work, more attention is typically going to be given to those later stages of life. That's just a given, obviously. Staying with age a little bit longer, I also want to share this info, which is quite interesting and fascinating, right? So here we can see the giving rate of different age demographics, and it's probably isn't too much of a surprise. We know that under 25s, they're very generous or can be very generous and altruistic. Then life might get in the way a little bit. The sentiment might shift for some people as they start or grow their families, they get married, and perhaps their priorities move. But what I do find interesting here is that although the giving rate declines, once people emerge from that midlife era, the average gift spend per bequester begins to climb again and quite significantly. So we see that over 55s and over 65s, they start to pledge extremely generous gifts. There's a few reasons that this might be happening. Typically, later in life, people are more financially comfortable or with less financial obligations. Their children might also be established as well. So there's just more room and space for supporting charities in more meaningful ways. We can look a little bit more closer at the over 65 demographic. And again, really interesting finding is that it turns out that people in the 75 to 84-year-old bracket pledged the highest value of gifts of any age cohort. So everyone actually over 65 was pledging higher than the average gifts, which is very, very encouraging. What does this mean in practical terms is for us, it's a major sign of the commitment that many older will writers have towards causes and organizations that they care about. If gifts like this are being included at that stage of a person's life, it's less likely that the will's going to be changed or rewritten. So it's a very positive sign of future revenue for your organization. Uh, I think that's enough about age demographics. Let's move to location demographics. So here we've got an interesting overview of the different giving behaviours across Australian states and of course in New Zealand as well. And hello to all of our New Zealand-based organisations that have dialed in. Within Australia, Queenslanders were the most prolific will writers. They accounted for over 23% of wills written on the platform, despite representing only 20% or a little over 20% of the Australian population. So Queenslanders are clearly a very prepared bunch and they're on board with estate planning. However, their giving rate was slightly lower than average at 14.4%. So they ended up contributing about 21.5% of all gifts in the platform. In contrast, Victorians, they had a higher than average tendency towards giving, with 19.9% of will writers from the Garden State including at least one gift in their will. And this generosity, combined with their high rates of will writing, led to the Victorian market pledging the majority of gifts in the Every Will platform, which was 24% of gifts in the platform. There was one other region with higher giving rates, and that one was ACT. So over a fifth pledged at least one charitable gift in their will. However, relatively few wills were written by ACT residents. So even with a higher gifter rate, they accounted for a lower percentage of the total gifts. So while Queensland were very prepared in terms of estate planning, New South Wales really not doing the best job. So despite over 31% of the population residing in New South Wales, less than 21% of wills were written by residents of that state, which indicates an opportunity, the potential for more education in this area on the importance of obviously estate planning. And then, of course, let's look to New Zealand. So, online will writing has grown significantly in New Zealand. In 2023, the first year New Zealanders were able to complete every wills. They accounted for 6% of all wills written on our platform for that particular year. That has now increased to 14.4% of all wills, and it's 10.2% of all gifts. So, Kiwis are certainly showing some really engaging levels and encouraging rates within the platform. Uh, that's it from me about location-based stats. Adam, you are a proud family man. I'll let you run through the next demographics.
Pleasure. Thanks for that, Mike. So let's take a look at parenthood, relationships, and family structure to see how this affects things. First up, parenthood. So we can see here that parents are writing the majority of wills, sitting just under 64%, but they only account for half the gifts and 28% of gift value. Now, look, I'm pretty sure this isn't going to be a surprise to most of us, but I think it really highlights an important factor to keep in mind here. That's really the percentage of people without children is growing, and it has been growing since the late 70s. If the current patterns persist, it's expected that about half the adult population won't have children by 2050. Now, on the surface, this is a really positive effect on charities because this group gives more frequently and larger gifts. However, in terms of bequest fundraising, there's a problem. They're not writing wills at the same rate. Even a modest increase in will writing engagement within the no parents sector of people could translate into substantial long-term gains for charities and nonprofits. So we really do think that conversations around the importance of estate planning need to move beyond some of the traditional inheritance narratives centered on children and instead start to reflect some of the diverse motivations of people for having a will, whether that's supporting causes they care about or providing for friends, protecting pets, or just setting out personal wishes. We're seeing the same thing with relationship status. Much like parenthood, relationship status is a significant indicator for will writing and gift pledging behaviors. Most wills, 58%, are written by people who are either married or in a de facto relationship. But single people account for over 51% of gifts pledged and almost 60% of gift value. So again, this really underscores the importance of leading estate planning conversations that go beyond discussing the benefits of protecting partners and children and start to consider some of the other motivations that drive people to plan their future. Now, look, of course, we're not saying to abandon that sort of traditional messaging about providing for your family and saving them stress and appointing guardians. But we do think it might be worth creating some specific cons or assets that start to tap into some of the different motivations that people may have. I think that's a good sort of high level insight into some of the demographics. Let's start to look into how this is playing across against some of the different cause areas. Now, I just want to start off by saying that this table isn't a ranking of which cause area or sector is performing best. This really just helps to gain some insight into where a lot of the revenue is going and where there's significant room for growth. It's also highly influenced by the number of organizations within each space that currently partner with us. So, for example, we have far fewer sporting or arts organizations currently partnering with us compared to the number of health and disability charities or animal and wildlife organizations, for example. But there are organizations in every cause area doing really incredible work. So this is not a leaderboard by any means. It's just some context that's important to understand. With that said, there are a few areas here that are particularly notable. Firstly, health and disability charities receive a lot of support from will writers, more than any other cause area that we've analyzed. Over the 5-year period, over $323 million was pledged to organizations in this area. Animal and wildlife charities also see a lot of support, as well as community and social services, as well as humanitarian and international. On the other end of the spectrum, there's still a lot of room for growth in some sectors, which have been a little bit slower to adopt online wills. For example, at this point, we're partnered with fewer than 2 dozen arts and culture organizations, yet more than $6 million has been pledged to those organizations. So even though the overall amount pledged looks modest, it's having a phenomenal impact on those individual charities. In the full report, which, as Mike mentioned, will be sent out, we do offer a much more in-depth breakdown of the different cause areas. We're conscious of overloading everyone with too many stats and numbers at this point. So if you're interested in seeing some of the progression of pledges over time in your particular area, keep an eye out in your emails. You can jump into some more in-depth data there. All right, with that, I think it's probably time to talk about probated wills. Now, as you all know, particularly anybody who's had a discussion with Mike or myself or our teams, there is fairly limited data on probated wills nationally, which we appreciate can be a bit frustrating. In terms of online wills, this data, unfortunately, is even a bit more sparse because it is so new still. We know this, and we're really trying our best to bring you as much data and insight as possible. Part of this is coming from our probate team at Gathered Here Legal. But look, as I said, there's just a relatively small team there and a small number of cases, but they are looking at cases from across the country that help families with all types of wills too. So not just every wills and not even just online wills. So it could be wills written through our platform, through solicitors, other will kits, or even just self-written on a piece of paper. The Gathered Here legal team has dealt with all of those. Now, important to note, there's no requirement to have a will written via every will. We do get some good insight into the differences between these types of wills. So from this experience, we know that online wills are increasingly navigating the courts and successfully completing the probate process. In the most straightforward way possible, this is clear evidence that they're a valid, reliable, and trusted method of estate planning. An analysis of probate cases handled by the Gathered Here legal team found that 20% of all wills prepared online, and those 47% were written by Everywill. And remarkably, every single online will, even those with minor will writer errors, was successfully granted probate. This data also shows that online wills are being used for larger and more complex estates. The highest value estate distributed through an Everywill document was $2.4 million. Again, this reflects a growing consumer confidence in digital estate planning, and even in those cases of significant assets. This analysis also provides an accurate and up-to-date view of the typical estate values. Across real probated online wills, the average estate value is $636,990. So that's about $20,000 off the number that we've been using in our forecasts. So you can rest assured that the data you've been reporting on has stood up to time in real world tests over the years. Taking that a bit further, though, once we reach the data set that has national representative and statistically significant, we're going to be updating our Gifts and Wills management platform with that number. So your estimates will be as up to date and as accurate as possible. And yes, I know the question everyone wants to ask is we're seeing gifts coming through. There's a one-off $50,000 gift and then several $1,000 gifts. Again, as we get more data on online wills, we absolutely want to share as much as we can and share as much of that insight with you as possible. We've been in talks with a few organizations to try and cast more light onto some of these differences because we know that gifts coming through, we're talking to families, we're talking to charities, but we just don't have all of that data yet. And look, that is a big yet. We have to deal with it, but we will get there. And of course, we'll share all the information with you as things progress over time. And look, I think with that in mind, it's time to maybe look at some forecasts for the future. Now, look, it's taken us over 5 years to reach the $1.6 billion in pledged request amount that we've spoken about a few times. But at the rate we're currently growing, we expect to reach $3 billion in pledges before the end of 2028. Part of that is just because of how rapidly online wills are catching on. As we've mentioned a few times, we're really seeing estate planning move from a fairly formal activity into something that's much more part of the regular upkeep of life admin. With that changing trend, we expect to reach 300,000 online wills before the end of next year. We'll be doing another Gifts and Wills report next year, so you can check back on how we're tracking against some of these projections. But I think the key takeaway here is that online wills still have a lot of room to grow. Working in the bequest space, we're very familiar with online wills, and we know that they're not a new thing anymore, like they were not too long ago. But there's still a lot of people in Australia and New Zealand who are new to this and will be engaging for the first time over the next few years. It's a really exciting time to be involved with this type of fundraising because we believe we're on the precipice of a pretty major shift in behavior, both in terms of how people plan their estates and how they support charities.
I think there's only one question in the Q&A that's being answered, but if anyone's got any questions, please use the Q&A box now because that's about everything from us. So thank you, obviously, for sticking with us. I know we've shared a whole lot of data, and as I mentioned, we'll also be sharing up and following up and sharing the recording of this session and also a copy of the Gifts and Wills report, so that if you just you can have that on hand. If you want to grab it now, though, there's a QR code there and you can scan that and it'll give you instant access to download it.
Got a few questions coming in. Amanda's just
Coming in.
asked, do we find a lot of charities sharing multiple online will companies, and what's the impact of that? Really great question. We've definitely seen that increase more in recent years, particularly for larger organizations who maybe have bigger budgets to spend across multiple platforms. In terms of the impact, that's hard to sort of highlight. Obviously, we don't have access to the results and reporting from other online platforms out there.
Yeah.
I think broadly what we've seen, and Mike, please jump in if you have any thoughts on this, but there's a few different ways that some of our partners do kind of work with multiple providers. There's kind of different messages at different times for different platforms, or there's kind of the consistent message all the time with different choices for their supporters. My biggest advice would be to chat with Mike and his team about what they've seen work well. But yeah, ultimately choices are out there, and we have to acknowledge that and be mindful that at the end of the day, individuals need to use a platform that they're most comfortable with for whatever reason that may be.
Yeah, and a key point of difference, obviously, we don't expect our partners to be exclusive with us. If there's another platform out there that also serves your bequest program, please consider it. Our point of difference and our value proposition is we can be a supporter or member benefit to you. We're a free will writing service, and a will is a very important document, and it's something that you can offer freely during perhaps difficult times where people can't make that investment into solicitor drafted or any paid form of will. So the free will offering is a really important one, and something that you can offer to your supporters who need that document and maybe making charitable decisions when completing it. So part of that is certainly where we align with.
Thanks, Mike. Amanda's just said, do you feel it confuses or overwhelms people? Again, I think that really comes down to how you're sharing that messaging.
Yeah.
And again, I think there's a few different ways you can kind of go about that. But yeah, ultimately, I think there's a way you can provide people with choices without necessarily confusing them. But it is probably a fine line to walk there. So.
And a couple of different ways we can share that message, either in your direct campaigns or the way you might have your support us or Gifts and Wills fixed website web listing and things like that. So we can help you with co-branding there.
Great. Janine has just asked, have you ever seen a prorated will written on every will include a gift to charity? Yes, there hasn't been anything hugely significant. It's been a few smaller gifts at this stage. Again, as I mentioned in that prorated wills bit, it is only a matter of time. So as we have some more data and some information that does become a bit more statistically relevant, we are very excited to share that information with you when it's here.
Next one from Pauline. Do we send prompts to remind will writers to print, sign, and witness their online wills? Yes, we have both an in-app or on the website and also an email journey to will writers on all the steps required to complete their will properly. So there's multiple prompts and a very nice will writer journey to take them through that process of making and obviously completing their will.
Here from Paul. Is there any future consideration for customers to upload signed copies to prove they've completed their will and not just printed it? Really good question, and it is something that we've discussed over time. Unfortunately, at this stage, the feeling is kind of that we're limited by the legislation here. We feel that the potential risk of having an upload portal is that people will print out their will, sign it, upload it back to us, and then shred the original. And unfortunately, at this stage, courts really only want that original document. So there's some legal precedent that's been set now for non-traditionally signed wills to be upheld in courts and for probate to be granted. So we're kind of on a journey here where we're hoping that there'll be some legislative changes that will allow us to do that. Certainly, we can do it. Technically, it's possible, and we have the capacity to do that. It's more just at this stage, we're potentially creating more problems than we're solving, in addition to asking people to have to scan something and send it back to us. So, yeah, kind of a watch this space one. But yeah, Paul would be more than happy to have a chat with you if you've got some thoughts on that around what can or should be done there.
Yeah. Questions coming in fast. I might take one from, where is it? Tracy. Yes. Would we bring in a minimum amount to give, as some people give $2.50 or low gift values, and if that comes via credit, credit has cost you more? Something to consider. I think we don't want to restrict people from completing their will with their intentions. What we can improve on is highlighting that a bequest might not be as meaningful as what they are setting out to achieve in that will, when it's a $2.50 gift, or a fixed money gift, or things like that. So I think restrictions, probably not something for us to review, but just making it much, much clearer and easier for people to understand the power of their bequest and the impact that can have, to try and drive those types of pledges to be higher. So a tricky one, but we have to make sure that we're a platform that allows people to set out their will through their intentions.
One here from Sonia. Do you find people are happy to share their details, or do you find people stay anonymous? Short answer to that is it's about 50% of people share their details.
Yeah.
A bit more in-depth answer to that is it does vary a little bit across cause areas. For example, we do tend to see a lower rate of opting in to share details in the mental health space, for example. A bit of a higher rate of sharing details for some of the more activism and environmental related organizations that we work with. There's also a bit of a change between those consumer will writers have a slightly lower rate of sharing their details versus people who are coming through links that you might share directly. But broadly, it's a pretty much a 50-50 split between people sharing details and those remaining anonymous.
And we see different opt-in rates as well, based on how that gift was pledged. So if it was via a supporter campaign and through your landing page, we see some different demographics there, but holistically across the platform, about 50-50. But if there's anything specific you'd like with your particular cause area or business itself, I'm more than happy to look into that. Might just take a couple more, and then any that exist, we'll certainly be answering these all offline as well. Any that,
We've got one here about actually looks like Nicola's answering that one now. This one, Caroline, do you send a follow-up email to those who have completed their will to confirm it's been signed and witnessed? So they get an email as part of the will writing process, and then the document itself that they download has step-by-step instructions from there. Currently, there's no kind of ongoing correspondence from there from us. We have in the past. What we found is we were getting some negative feedback from will writers. This was many years ago now. People basically just saying, I can follow the 5-step instructions that you've given me. Please stop emailing me. So, like a lot of things, it's a fine line that we have to balance between giving enough information, but then being mindful of, yeah, people don't necessarily want to keep hearing from us, and obviously us then being really mindful of the potential strain that puts on your relationship with supporters. If they're writing a will and they keep getting emails from us, I think we tend to be very sensitive to our inboxes these days, particularly with a free service that's being offered. So yeah, bit of a fine line there. But the short answer is currently no, there's sort of few reminders as part of the process there, but no sort of ongoing communications from Every Will beyond that.
I might need, excuse me, I might clarify this one directly with the partner afterwards. But Kim has said, do we have you have education as a gift? Do we have a breakdown where this gift goes? Are schools under that bracket? So you can nominate the cause area category or group that you appear in, and so education is a cause area, and that's where yes, typically school foundations, universities sit under. But of course, we work with other education-based organizations as well. But the good news is you can choose to nominate the cause area that most resonates with the work that you obviously do, and we can always update that one. But I might just double check that question.
I've got one here from Nina. Do you offer to store executed wills for will makers? No, we don't. Again, something we've looked into in the past. Um, One of the great benefits of our platform is that will writers get free and unlimited updates for life through our platform as well, which presents a pretty big hurdle with storage of executed wills. We feel that we kind of weaken the benefit of being able to update your will if there's a lengthy process of needing to contact us to get your original to then update it. Also, unfortunately, the sheer volume of wills that we're writing, we likely wouldn't be able to store them all for free. And again, it starts to sort of cloudy some of that messaging and some of the benefits of our platform being free wills. So, in short, no, we recommend people store their will someplace safe and make sure their executors know where to find it. And again, important to keep in mind with that non-solicitor drafted wills have been around for a long time, so they don't necessarily need to be stored and lodged somewhere. In terms of off-sites, that can be a document that you retain with all of your other important life paperwork.
Yep. There was a question about the $1 donation per will distributed to charities. So we'll announce that one to all of the mechanics of that program to all of our partners in the coming weeks. So not one that we can answer live at the moment, but yes, we rebranded to Every Will about a little over a month ago now, and that $1 pledge was introduced, and we're excited to share with you what that looks like. Just leave it with us for a little bit longer, and we'll share that to obviously all of our charity partners, and obviously have that available readily on our website to always reference as well. I'll let you take the last one if you want, Adam, and then any that are left to remain, we'll answer after the webinar.
Yeah, great. So, Nina, we've got your question here. Can you appear in multiple cause categories?
Yep.
Yes, we try to limit that to two, but you can experiment in different categories as well and kind of see what the uptake is there. So, um, we within reason, I guess, is the important caveat to that. So, but yeah, we appreciate that a lot of our partners do sit across multiple cause areas, but obviously, yeah, not going to let everyone go through and check every tick box next to every cause area. It does just get a bit overwhelming for wheel riders at that stage. So, yes, my advice would be, yeah, speak to your partner success manager about that, and you can delve into that a bit deeper.
And again, anyone who left a question that might not have been addressed, we will get back to you. Some of you might have posted it also in the chat. We've seen it, and we'll be in touch as soon as we can with your specific answer on that as well.